Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. Well, we had a great conference once again, 600 people this year. And with breakout sessions, we were able to have more different sessions, more different subjects, more interaction, but there's never enough time to interact. I'm just checking to see if people are there. Hello, good, yes, you are there. That's excellent. For those of you who were unable to come, some people were unable to come because of failure. There was unfortunate scheduling there. We won't let that happen again. And of course, there are people who are unable to travel. So we are again, just as we did this year, we're putting the videos online for everyone to watch. And this evening, you saw the premiere of the keynote addresses given by Kate Harris and myself. And now I'm here to answer any questions you might have about them. Well, I haven't done this before, so I think I probably started too early. Never mind. I hope everybody can hear me all right. And sometimes I get too close to the screen and then I look incredibly silly, and apparently everybody can see my nostrils, which I don't really want to happen. So anyway, won't do that. So anyway, we think these conferences are really important in our work to support and protect and promote the rights of LGBT people. And you tell us it's important as well. In fact, we keep hearing incredibly positive messages about how much you appreciate the conferences. And I was also moved this year, as I was last year, by all the people who kept coming up to me to thank me. So thank you, because this exchange it really energizes us as well as it energizes, I think, you. Those who attended the conference will be getting a questionnaire like you did last time to give your feedback, including constructive criticism and things that you missed, you wish we would do next time. It is, of course, an incredibly expensive event. As you know, we rely on your donations. So this live stream does have a super chat button. That's the little dollar thing down on the bottom right. So if you do feel like donating, we'd be incredibly grateful. So let's have a look and see if you have any questions. So I see somebody's asking how many people attended compared to last year. So last year we had about 500, that's including all the guests and speakers and volunteers and so on. And this year we had 600. Yes, a little bit, a little bit more than last year. What I really I was very excited, obviously, about the international panel, but we're talking about that on Friday. Kate talked a lot about accountability, and I think that I hope that we'll be able to get the accountability. Our leaders, it's people in positions of leadership, isn't it, that we really want to hold accountable. So this year got fewer protests and pushback. Why do you think that was? Well, obviously, I hope that it is because more and more people are understanding what we are doing, and that we actually really are promoting the rights of LGBT people. And in spite of the small and rather aggressive band of people who call us unpleasant names and keep saying that we're a hate group and so on. And these people seem to be very far removed from reality. They don't actually come to the conference. They don't listen to what we say. And they assume that we are anti-trans, and which is very offensive to our trans supporters. It's actually offensive to all of us, because, I mean, it's so foreign to me to be hateful of. I mean, I've supported minorities all my life, so it's very odd to be called these odd names. But this is the climate that we live in. The proposed helpline. Well, so as you know, we got the money to fund the trial, the initial setup, which is planning the whole thing and deciding, what is actually needed, what are the possible pitfalls, what are the advantages, and scoping the whole project. And that is now, that scoping process is almost finished. So in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we'll be ready to put in the bid for the project itself, which is of course a very expensive project, and we have to build in huge safeguards. I mean, safeguarding is a big priority for LGB Alliance, and it's just so important to ensure, especially when you're dealing with young people, that you have people with the proper experience, the proper safeguarding procedures in place, and that you don't make the kind of mistakes we've heard of elsewhere. Anyway, sex pronouns. Well, as you know, we don't have a position on pronouns. I sometimes use, I mean, I understand why some people say sex pronouns are important. I totally understand that position. I just don't, I don't know, I feel quite, I don't like being told what pronouns to use, basically, by anybody. And so I will not always keep to any rules. I will do what seems appropriate to me in terms of the relationship I have with the person and what seems right at the time. So I don't like that dogmatism about language. My language is mine, and I think very carefully about my language, but I don't want to be told what language to use. How can we acknowledge or show our support and solidarity with existing trans people so we can separate the acronym without all the hate? What hate? You see, I just don't see the hate. I mean, there are perhaps people out there who are hateful. You certainly won't hear us saying anything hateful. And basically, LGBT rights are about sexual orientation, and they're just not the same thing as, I mean, they're about relationships with other people. And T is about people's identity, how they feel about themselves. It's a very, very different thing. And sometimes those things collide, they clash, and therefore they shouldn't really have been put together. It would have been better. And I think it was a plan originally for there to be a trans rights organization set up along the lines of Stonewall that would be the fight for the rights and demands, the hopes of trans people. And I think that would have been a much more sensible place to go, because by putting them all together, and you hear, an LGBTQ person, what on earth is an LGBTQ person? It doesn't make any sense at all. And what has happened, and you sometimes see this very, very clearly, that something which is supposedly for LGBTQ plus people is actually really only for TQ plus people. That's why I've started saying LGB and TQ plus, because I really don't think it's helpful for us to use this LGBT or LGBTQ plus. It's not an acronym. What's it called? A word collection? No, letter collection. I don't know what's called. It's called something else. No, we're not allowed to talk about the mermaids case, other than the fact that it's still ongoing. We're back in court on Monday and Tuesday, and I presume there will be a link for people to watch it online, but and those will be the closing statements, and they were supposed to be in September, but there wasn't quite enough time, so that's going to be on Monday and Tuesday, and then we await the judgment. And we don't know when that will be. The new appointment at Stonewall. Well, I mean, yes, Mr. Aniston went on TV and said something nice about a big tent. And then as soon as some people from the big tent said, "Oh, great, that's lovely," he said, no, not that big. No, I just meant I want to talk to people who have the same sort of ideas as I do. Yes, well, that's not what we call a big tent. So that was... yeah, not really very helpful. A religion, I'm not quite sure what that says. Accountability. Yeah, I mean, erasing women's, I mean, all this medical stuff, who is accountable for that? It's quite shocking, isn't it, that we read today that all these medical schools have now signed up to some LGBTQ plus thing, which means that they essentially are abandoning the needs of LGBT teens, and this is the problem, and this is why it's so striking that people who are interested in this whole area quite often say that they haven't actually. No, that Cass report. Oh no, and I looked at a bit of it. No. It's such an important report. I'm really absolutely astonished if there's anybody who is interested in this area who has not read the interim report from the Cass review. Please go and do so, because otherwise you really don't know much about this area. I mean, there's lots of other things to read, but I think that's actually a really, really important thing. Yes, Monday and Tuesday is the final statements. We could do more with our Twitter account, retweeting other organizations fighting the same fight. Well, I'll pass that on to the social media people who I'm sure are listening. So, yeah, a lifelong suspended on Twitter. Yes, we don't really know what Elon Musk is going to do. Well, we said he put out a message saying that that he intends that he's getting to have this committee together, and that in a few weeks' time he's going to decide what, whether some of those banned accounts can be reinstated or not. And I hope he starts off with Meghan Murphy, because I think that was one of the craziest ones, wasn't it? But there's so many women, women who have said simply true things have been banned from Twitter. So have we started communicating with the new government? Well, I haven't, but it's possible some others have. I'm not sure. I can't answer that. Does Kate Harris have an intention to get back on Twitter? I don't think she can. I think she could perhaps, if Elon Musk changes his policy, perhaps Kate is one of those who could come back on Twitter. That's an interesting question. I don't know. Why don't those who accuse LGBT Alliance of hate realize the harm they cause to people like me? Yeah. I mean, some of them do it quite deliberately. It's a technique, isn't it? If you call somebody hateful, then all your friends think, oh, that person's hateful, I don't need to listen to them. And some of them are simply repeating what they've heard. And some of them really think it is hateful. They think it is really hateful. If I say that a lesbian doesn't have a penis and lesbians are not, they think that is a hateful thing to say. Well, I'm sorry. If you think that is a hateful thing to say, then you want to change the meaning of the word lesbian. And I just don't accept that. Anyway, Jordan Gray. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, a male person can't be a lesbian. So, I mean, that's our position. And as you know, if anybody finds that insulting, that's unfortunate, but that is what a lesbian is a woman who is attracted to other women, and we're very clear on what a woman is. So help in the Netherlands. Yes, I haven't done very much in the Netherlands. As you know, I actually live in the Netherlands, but it's been quite difficult to combine working here where there's no women's rights movement in the Netherlands. Well, I don't know if everybody would agree with getting an account on Getter, but some might do so. Plans for the future, that's too big a question. But as you know, I mean, it's so interesting that I remember that when we first started LGBT Alliance, one of the things we wanted to do was to set up, we had quite far advanced, Kate had quite far advanced plans to set up old age homes for LGBT people. And we got sidetracked almost immediately, having to deal with all sorts of criticism and comments. And it's quite, but as you know, of course, the helpline is very important. And also reinvigorating lesbian, gay and bisexual culture, music and other forms of culture, which have somewhat languished in recent years. Starmer, yeah, I don't know. Starmer said that he suddenly, having made all sorts of really odd statements, he suddenly said that he totally disagreed with children being able to make any important decisions without their parents, and so this caused quite a stir. And I don't know, to be quite honest, is it just PR or is he changing at all? I've no idea. I have no insight into that. It was noted on by different people, but I just don't know. building a positive and healthy homosexual and gay culture. Yeah, for sure, for LGBT youth. Yes, and I think one of the things that FICA said was it's so important to establish links between older and younger generations, because with this gap in especially with young people who've been to university is really great. It's really it's unfortunate that this gap, and we need to bridge it. Student groups. Yes, there are student groups are being formed now. I'm not sure that very far along, but anybody who's interested in joining that should get in touch with us. So how can you help? Well, yeah. Well, there is, you can go on our website and sign up as a volunteer, and lots of people do that. I think it's really a good idea when you do that to immediately think, how much time have you got available? What are your best skills? And, what would you be happy doing? What would you be able to do? What do you think you could contribute? So things like, we don't particularly need people who write, for instance, because we're quite a lot of us are writers ourselves. But there are other things which can be done, which are perhaps sometimes more boring. But see what you are able to do, what your experience, and give sort of details as to what your experience is, how many hours, and maybe give a reference. I mean, if you want, and if there's no response, because it sometimes happens that we're so busy that somebody's, we really value every single person, and some people I think feel not highly valued enough because they don't get a response. They offer to do something and then they don't hear, and they think, oh well, we are. Most of us are volunteers. We just don't have all that much time, and sometimes important messages are missed. So please just write again if that happens. Yeah. So yes, well, we don't know if he. I mean, he said he'd read the Cass report. This is back to Starmer. We're not sure if he really had or not. Yeah, we hear about LGBT groups, that most young people who mention to us LGBT groups say that they're all T and not so LGBT. So young people who actually are not drawn to the whole notion of gender identity and simply would be happy being with other gays and lesbians have nowhere to go at the moment. And so we really have to reinvigorate that whole world. There's an immense amount to do, and if people have any ideas on that front, perhaps you should let us know. The helpline is incredibly important, and plans for older people. Well, certainly some older people, I think, are deriving benefit from the new Friends program, which is going to be, which is setting up various local groups around the country. It's not only for older people as well, of course, but especially older people, I think sometimes can feel quite isolated, LGBT people. And so if you are interested in the Friends program, get in touch and to see if there are plans for the neighborhood that you live in, the city that you live in. There is a volunteer form on the website. Yes, Richard, thank you. Let me see. Local groups. Well, that's what I was talking about with the Friends Network. So keep an eye out in the newsletter. There'll be in the newsletter. There will be reports on the Friends Network, and then you can see that. Now, the idea for an LGBT Pride, we had some very mixed responses to that. Some people thought it was a really bad idea, and some people thought it was a wonderful idea. We haven't come back to it yet, and it's something we'll come back to, whether or not it's a sensible plan or not. It's I think the jury's out on that at the moment. So yeah, some people think it's a great idea, and other people are not so sure. So yeah, people do have disagreements, and one of the wonderful things, one of the things I love most about LGBT Alliance is just the open atmosphere that you can just exchange views, you can disagree with each other. Negative comments on the Pride event. Well, some people thought that it would simply that it would be likely smaller and therefore possibly ridiculed or or it would attract demonstrations and it wouldn't be a joyful event. I don't know. There are all sorts of pros and cons that you might think about it. And an online LGBTI, that's a really lovely thought, isn't it? The person who's just suggested an online LGB global event. Of course, it's incredibly difficult to have a global event because of all the time zones. So you'd have to have it, I think, at 2:00 in the afternoon for GB in order for Australians and people from India and the United States to join in, something like that. But it is possible. And I think that's rather a lovely idea. And so maybe we should come back to that. Yeah, the consumerism of Pride, and particularly the hypocrisy, of course, with the being funded by countries that are homophobic is quite shocking. A week-long event with a week-long online thing with multiple. Oh, I see, at different times. Yeah, you're really into this, aren't you? This online event. Okay, perhaps you'd like to write a little proposal and send it in for the online Pride celebration. That sounds like a really good idea. That it would go back to its roots to get away from the. I mean, if I look back at what Pride used to be, I loved that the movie with the support for the miners. I mean, just the kind of the solidarity and the real sense of feeling between people who were fighting for the same cause, and that was just an amazing sense, wasn't it? Yeah, where are we? Yeah, the movie Pride. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. So, do you have? I would like to ask you something, actually. The people who are in the chat. I mean, do you find that it's now easier to talk to people about our ideas? Well, I am writing a book, actually, but yeah, I'm not going to talk about it yet, but I will come back to it. Do you find it easier now to talk about our principles and ideas than you did, for instance, a year ago or 2 years ago? Does anybody have any comments to make about that? I'm quite interested to hear. Lots of older lesbians coming out of long-term relationships are blindsided by the current situation. Yeah, it's really sad, because I think people who are actually already in relationships, and certainly people who've been in relationships for a long time, quite often have no idea what's going on. They think, I don't have any problems. So they talk about problems, and then they start looking for a partner again, and they think, whoa, what's happened? The world has completely changed. So some people are saying, yes, it isn't easier, but you're becoming braver. People are more tolerant when you say you're lesbian or gay. More people understand what's happening. Yes, I really noticed that when I was at the Conservative Party conference, that instead of people coming up and saying, oh, what's this LGBT? Well, what are you about? People were coming up and saying, oh, yeah, I really think it's great what you're doing. And yes, it gets better, but you have to, yeah, we must be positive. I mean, there is always a slight tendency to say, oh, to react, to be reactive, to react to criticism, to react to unpleasantness. And we always have to make an effort to say, no, let's focus on the positive things that we are doing and our positive aims, our positive plans, and try not to get sucked into the nastiness of those who say unpleasant things about us. So somebody says that she was clueless until the granddaughter got dragged into the gender identity ideology. Yeah, I mean, what's happening at schools is really quite scary, and we hope that similarly to the NHS, the new NHS guidelines, that there will be much stricter guidelines enforced at school, so that children don't get the idea that their bodies might be wrong. Richard is saying it is easier and better to speak out now, and he says he's pleased to see more gay men speaking out too. Previously, it was left to lesbians. I remember actually right at the beginning, in the first few weeks of LGBT Alliance that it was almost all lesbians, and that I thought, oh, there's a gay man, there's a gay band joining us, and I was really quite excited. I mean, there were very, very few gay men at the beginning, and I suppose there's various reasons for that. I think lesbians have suffered most from the imposition of gender identity ideology. And let's face it, if women decide identify as men and they call themselves trans men, it is perhaps irritating to gay men, but it doesn't pose the same kind. It isn't quite the same, I think, as lesbians finding their dating sites, for instance, half full of people with male bodies. Yes, do focus your energy on minds that can be changed and not wasted on radical activists. Yeah, I said that in my speech, and I do think just ignore the people who you know you're not going to change their minds. What is the point? Don't engage them. Engage with people who are ignorant, who haven't really. And I don't mean ignorant in a horrible way. I mean people. If you're an environmentalist and you spend all your time focusing on the environment, you may not know about LGBT rights. That doesn't mean you're an ignorant person. It just means that that's not been your focus. And now somebody's telling you about this new area, and you need to be patient. These are not necessarily ignorant people, but you can't focus on everything all at once. There's lots of things I know nothing about. Lesbians are seen as more trustworthy. By whom? I'm not quite sure what that means. Several gay men quite ashamed. A gay man saying he's ashamed that it took him so long to realize what was happening. Well, don't be ashamed. I mean, because it's always better to realize something than not to realize it. I'm just very happy that so many gay men are now really being incredibly supportive. And I love the fact that we are working with women and men together. I know that there are some lesbians who prefer to work only with other women. That's just not how I feel. I mean, I think it's great for us all to work together. It's not always easy because some of the interests of lesbians are maybe different from some of the interests of gay men. So sometimes you have to navigate that. But that's the world. That is the world, and let's navigate the world as it is. Malta. Oh God, you're in Malta. Oh dear. Yeah, well, I mean, Malta is held up as this shining example, as wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And of course, it's not wonderful at all. I mean, apart from the terrible, terrible corruption, it's such a teensy tiny country that you only needed one or two people to introduce some really quite draconian rules. And Malta, of course, the only country in the EU in which abortion is illegal. Wait a minute, a Christian who was called a transphobe for not thinking bulges were to be, pardon? Sorry, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what that means. I think I ought to know what it means, but I've forgotten. So Sam is saying it's still difficult to speak up. And now, but he did speak to a taxi driver. Excellent. I love taxi drivers. Taxi drivers are like plumbers. They meet so many people. It's really they're interesting people to talk to. Don't have a Substack yet. I don't have time. I should have one. This is one of the things I say to myself. I wish I should have a Substack. Malcolm's got one now. Everybody should subscribe to Malcolm's Substack. Yeah, the Netherlands. Well, the Netherlands is exactly like Canada. You know, be kind, be kind, be kind. And there's no women's movement. There's no, I mean, shockingly, I mean, the COC, which is supposedly the gay rights organization, it's one of the, if not the oldest, well, it's one of the oldest gay rights organizations in Europe. And it's really quite shocking that we heard about 6 months ago that a somewhat feminine man, to speak in stereotypes, was persuaded by someone at the COC that he might be happier as a woman. Yes, but Malcolm is is saying that Sam donated. Am I supposed to be thanking every single person who donated, Malcolm? I mean, I'm very, very grateful to everyone who donates. Somebody's studying revealing gender, dogmatically affirmative of trans experiences, ignoring the possibility of it being temporary. Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's why I say young people at universities are much harder to talk to than young people who have not been to university, because they're taught these things as if they were factual instead of beliefs. And people don't seem to understand the difference between facts and belief anymore. I find that really quite scary. That's one of our biggest problems, isn't it? That people get mixed up between sex and gender and say, well, hang on, there are two sexes. No, it's a spectrum. No, there's no Bergs or, whatever it is. There's only two sexes. The COC is totally captured. That was the Dutch gay organization I was talking about. Malcolm says, yes, I should be thanking every single person. Is that what you're saying, Malcolm? I should thank every single person who is donating. All right, well, thank you, everybody. But Jungler says you don't have to thank me. Okay. All right. Anyway, we need an LG or LGB switchboard back for people in distress. Yes, I mean, obviously, the helpline, which won't only be a phone, but will also have other ways online. But children don't like phone calls. Apparently, they think voices are scary. They want to use some sort of a chat function. Yes, Malcolm, there is a dollar button under the blue line, so you can donate if you want, and I hope you do. And have we got any celeb supporters? Well, we've got lovely James Dreyfus, of course, and we have enjoyed, of course, some very supportive tweets and retweets from J.K. Rowling, and also we had a very nice message from Martina Navratilova at our conference, and many celebrities are. I have to say, some supporters behind the scenes, but are not willing or able to support us publicly, and that is people have reasons, and I mostly respect people's reasons, except for, as I say, politicians. I think that's really people in positions of leadership. I don't think that's excusable. Somebody has the idea that this ideology has a very long way to run. Yeah, I mean, some of us say, well, it might take another 10 years. Somebody said the other day it might take 20, but however long it takes, yeah, as Kate said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it's too important. It's too important. We have to. So Malcolm's thanking everybody now who is donating. Yes, we do. All right, we do need money. It is true. We don't have any funding from major funding, government funding, or anything like that. So we are dependent on individual donations. So if you do feel like donating, please press the dollar button, and every donation is very, very we're very grateful for. Will there be a way to contact the helpline from abroad? Oh my goodness. I don't know about that. It's a good question, and perhaps you should write that question to the send it in to LGB Alliance, because the people who are planning the helpline can take that on board, because I haven't seen anything about that. It's possible, I don't know. Well, thank you for the Spanish people, and there are some very, very good and active people, LGBT people in Spain, and have we tried to obtain government funding? No, we haven't. Paid subscribe to Malcolm's Substack. Well, that's excellent. I mean, Malcolm's Substack is really interesting, and in fact, also his threads are worth looking at as well. He's got some amazing threads that you can look back on. And what did Mary say? Oh, yes, that she's just subscribed to his Substack, right? communication between the different LGBT alliances through that. Well, you see, that's one of the things that I've neglected. For a while, I was having meetings between all the LGBT alliance groups around the world. And then, we got caught up in all these complaints and court cases and God knows what. And I haven't had a meeting with the LGBT alliance groups around the world for ages. And I'd really like to have one and get some more, hear what everybody's doing. I mean, some are doing brilliantly, especially, some amazing things have been happening in Australia, which I'd really like to share with other people. In Germany, Germany's quite a difficult situation, I think, but they've been working very hard. And in Spain and Iceland, Serbia, there's so many countries around the world where a lot of fantastic things have been going on, and we should share our experiences. Malcolm will not want to answer the question about Discord. He hates it, so that's why he's laughing. Should we campaign to get government funding? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure whether I want to get into that, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, what the pros and cons are. I don't think it's a good idea for me to. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, no, I don't want to go there, because I don't think I know enough about the advantages and disadvantages of having government funding. I don't think we could get it at the moment, but we have to. I mean, things are changing quite fast. As I say, people know more, and our reputation is much improving. More people understand what we're doing. So, yeah. If there aren't any other questions, I think we ought to be winding up around now. Yeah, exactly. Malcolm said they even if they send in FOIs to find out who have we been meeting. We've had a meeting with Kemi Badenoch. How shocking! And of course, I mean, all groups that represent different interests do that. All charities do, and groups that are not charities do. Yeah. So on Friday, we're going to be we'll have the premiere of the international panel that I was privileged to chair, and so I'm afraid you're going to have more of me again. And so I just want to thank you all for attending this first live stream event. Thank you for supporting us, for donating to us. We love you, and this gives us this is a really nice event to be able to have more back and forth, more communication with each other, and we hope to do lots of these events in future. So thank you, everybody. Bye bye.